This story happened years ago, but if you know me personally, I've told you this story at least once in our friendship relationship, which means you likely know my little brother as well. He'd knows this story I'm about to share with you as he experienced it with me. He'd tell you the exact same story if you asked him. I'm sure he remembers it the way I do, and it's a core memory we can't exactly get rid of. At this time, we lived in a small 2 to 3 bedroom house. It was an upstairs-downstairs home and consisted of me, my mom, my little brother, and my sister. Now my sister and I shared a bedroom, and my little brother had his own. But my mom had her bedroom downstairs, so she didn't sleep on the same floor as us. This is important as we didn't get to sleep in her room when scared at night. Around this time, I remember being in my late elementary ages, 7 to 8 years old, and my siblings were a year or two younger than me, 6 to 7 years old. So you can imagine we'd get easily frightened by the dark and our imagination around bedtime. It's expected to have these irrational fears at this age, but it also didn't help that our house was a little off at night. My mom would joke that it were her ghost boyfriend Jerry, but I think deep down she'd say it because she were also scared, and she didn't want to give us further reason to be scared. Our house was especially weird at night. Things would make noise on their own accord, such as heavy footsteps that belonged to no one who was creeping around the house at night, making the floorboards creak, even stomping in certain rooms of the house on some nights, demanding to be acknowledged. Voices echoed in the halls that were also not ours. They were very clear but also vague, silent cries, and more simply weeps or calls to someone, anyone listening to them. Things would disappear and reaper in the home. It was all weird, and I swear whatever else lived there had a thing for tormenting me and my siblings. I never really acknowledged it when we lived there, but when I revisit these memories, I get unsettled as it definitely wasn't normal. Although this night it seemed it was a regular night for me at bedtime, I had been laying in my brother's room with him and my sister, as one had mentioned they were feeling uneasy, so me and my sister decided to sleep over in my brother's room. This just helped us to get bed easier. It especially helped that his bedroom window invited the light from the street into his room, making it slightly easier to see in the dark, rather than me and my sister's room, which would be darker at this time. It didn't help that we also had a large closet in there too. I laid the furthest and closest to the edge of the bed, waking from the bed rocking a little when I slept. My brother's bed was at a loft bunk. It was high enough but also had enough space under that you could sit up under it. The only thing is that underneath it laid piles of dirty clothes, so there were no space to crawl or move under there freely. My eyes wandered around the room. With me being half asleep, I followed the lights reflecting on the wall, into the hallway of my brother's doorway. That's when I saw it. The figure, the shadowy figure, the silhouetted mimic of my mom. As you'd expect, younger me's breath stiffened and my eyes widened. My attention heightened by this potential threat, while I had a mini heart attack in the loud silence. Almost instinctively, I shook my brother. He were closest to me, and I didn't want to take my eyes off of whatever it was I was looking at, so I could tell if I were seeing this for real. I shook and shook and shook, refusing to let him fall back to sleep after the first few shakes. When I heard him wake, I felt immediate relief. Something about him being awake told me I wasn't dreaming now, and no longer alone to experience this. A reason to be brave. I cleared my throat and managed to ask him when he sat up, "Do you see that at all?" I pointed out to him and described it as he tried to find what I was looking at. It were so dark, it were hard to tell if I were just imagining it or if it were real. The best way to describe it is that it were a shadowy figure, a literal silhouette. It had no face, no clothes, but a shadowy aura that made it hard to see its skin or body clearly. Only thing that seemed real visible were its hair, in which copied our mother's. It were so curly, the same length, and practically laid in the same style my mom's hair would lay in. It continued to stare at us silently, still, uncanny, and feeding on our fears. It were extremely unnerving the way it sat just in the hall, hiding right before the doorway, peeking into the room at us. It blended into the dark. Only way for us to tell it was really there were by the strands, if its hair that stayed visibly clear to see. It listened to our irrational conversation and weak attempts to scare it off, staying still and silent. My brother, now seeing it, had gotten the same idea I had, and began calling out to it, believing it were our mother. "Mommy, we see you. We know that's you, Mommy. Now that I think of it, it really frightens me that we even thought it were our mom to begin with. That's how similar it was to her. And with so little features to work with, we were convinced out of fear. The fact that it knew it looked like her too and mimicked her is what scares me most. My reasoning to believing this was my mom was maybe she wanted us to go to bed, so she scared us to do so. But it also didn't dawn on me that I had woken up to that originally. In the process of me and my brother trying to convince ourselves it were her, we laid down to show her we were going to bed, in hopes she'd walk away, move, or say something to prove it were her. Especially if we're assuming she were doing that one distinct mom glare that moms do to get their kids to behave. Looking away for a slight second, the figure finally moved. It were abrupt and quick. It ran at us and hid right underneath the bed. Me and my brother looked at each other, fully convinced this were our mom now, believing she were playing an odd game with us. We peeked under the bed after sitting up from the jump start and didn't see anything but the laundry left there before. It looked untouched and also still. We didn't see our mom, but the cloth piles instead. This made my heart sink immediately, as my mind went to, whatever it was is now gone, but it's also right under us. I know my brother was scared too, as he began hiding under his blanket and scooting away from the edge of the bed. I did the same, ensuring that my siblings were safe, as my sister slept through all of this beside us. To this day, I have no idea what I experienced, but this ghost or entity has taken up some space in my brain since. I don't know how we slept after that, but we did. It was so scary we never spoke of it till a few years later, and when we brought it up to our mom after moving out of the house, she had a nervous laugh about it, as she never heard of this happening, but also confirmed she'd never done something like that to us. It was a weird home after all, and I have a few more stories of weird encounters that happened there, but they were all slightly less traumatizing. Let me know if something similar happened to you at all, or if we know what to call this phenomenon. This was today's story. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel to receive upcoming stories. Bye.